What's the most disgusting thing you've ever done in your life? NSFW. Threw up minutes after swallowing an ecstasy pill, used my phone's flashlight to pick it out of the vomit, and sent it back down chased by a beer. Saved $10 that night. My ex-wife was allergic to almost all regular painkillers. No ibuprofen, no paracetamol, no codeine, no aspirin, etc. The only thing she didn't get an allergic shock from was morphine, synthetic or real. After a long delivery which finally ended in a C-section, she was incredibly constipated due to the very little pain meds she took and also her gut being sliced open to bring our son out. She was gassy, and in a lot of pain from it. She couldn't get her bowels to move enough for release due to the surgery. So I got her to sit on the throne, put a nitrile glove on. Then I reached in and physically shoved a turd aside inside her colon so that gas could pass out of her. The draft blew along my arm, and her relief was instant. In retrospect, and looking at it from the outside, it was pretty disgusting. But at the moment I didn't mind it at all. Her relief was well worth it. Edit, holy moly. Thanks for all the replies telling me how amazing I am. I still just think it's the kind of thing a marriage should be about. She was in pain and I could help. But thanks a whole bunch. I've had it a bit rough since the divorce. You guys really brightened my day. I used to roughhouse way too much as a child, and constantly ripped holes in my cheap underwear. This exasperated my mother. So to skip being lectured at, I decided to make do with my old ripped underwear for as long as I could. Right after this decision, I had to spend an extra hour on the school bus because of a massive accident on the way, or something. It was also the day I'd ripped my shorts while doing splits at recess. The extra hour was very hard on me, as I usually went potty right after I reached home, probably thanks to the high-fiber lunch I ate every day. That day, after more than 40 minutes of extreme bowel control on the bus, 6-year-old me finally lost the battle and let it go. I told myself that I could handle an underwear full of potty for a few minutes. What I'd forgotten about was the holes. The true horror of the situation hit me when I tried to get up, and felt a clammy wetness connecting me to the seat. It's a miracle I didn't pass out from shame and extreme anxiety. When the bus pulled up at my stop, I shot out of it like a burst of smelly wind, leaving behind a smushed pile of yellow-brown high-fiber poop on the seat. The driver later told my parents that he could see the imprint of my short seams on the pile and knew it was me, but I'm pretty sure he was lying about that. Dug through 14 bags of medical waste because a scrub nurse thought she maybe threw away a specialized surgical instrument. In 95 heat. Some of the bags had been outside since the day before. The other scrub tech and I kept asking, between bags, if she'd found it. Always no. She found it under a sponge on her tray. Fuck you, Stephanie. Edit, just woke up. This wasn't in the US, though all the players were American. Don't do medical mission trips. Was sick. Eating pizza pockets. Threw up. Closed mouth. Shot strings of cheese out nose like fucking Spider-Man. When I was 2, my mother found me in the living room with blood running from my mouth. She OFC got very concerned and ran to me to find out what was wrong and rush me to the hospital. Weirdly enough, I was not crying or upset when she got to me and opened my mouth. She found out why. I was chewing on a giant tick. According to her, the abdomen was about 15 millimeters in diameter. Now you may wonder how such a large tick got in the house. Well, of course it had fallen off our dog. Well, it's honestly not that bad, but I'm sure any workers in healthcare can relate. During clinicals I worked in central processing at a small hospital, and along with all the body fluids, they would send up random body parts on a dumbwaiter to be sent to the proper department. I guess the grossest thing that ever came up was a huge anal polyp. Another was a piece of brain. And the black toe they had to cut off due to gangrene. Eventually it stopped being gross and started being fascinating. Except for the poop. The poop was always gross. When I was under 10 years old, I pooped a little in a small plastic container, filled it up with water and left it on the side of my balcony. I don't know why I did this, but no one ever noticed. I forgot about it for a couple months and one day I remembered and came back to see it was still there. So I threw it out the balcony of the 3rd floor. It fell on the parking lot and blew up horridly. I don't know what happened later, but good thing no one was close, as that shit might have been toxic. Edit, I actually didn't fill it up with water but piss instead. Don't know why I lied, not like Reddit cares at all. The short version is that I was severely constipated and had diarrhea behind the hard stool. Once my bowels were evacuated and I had white, I lost balance on my weakened legs and caught myself by plowing my hand right into the bowl of a rundown gas station toilet. Don't eat MREs for a week while camping, then cook and eat fish from a questionable creek on the last day. I had to trim all of my fingernails to the meat to get shit smell off of my fingers. I was sneezing like crazy and didn't know why. I tried Piriton and it did nothing. I didn't feel unwell either, so just rolled with it. A couple of days later I was round a friend's house and really sneezed hard and a little curly noodle came out of my nose. I pulled on it slowly and it slid out all wiggly, which set off my gag reflex. I just managed not to puke on my friend's floor, but I wanted to. It measured about 5 inches stretched out. It was from Chinese food I ate 4 days prior. Ate toilet paper off a road. I was keen on dares and doing stupid stuff to get attention when I was 15. I was a caretaker for mentally challenged people for a while. Once we suspected that this guy had eaten a rubber glove, and to be sure we had to give him an enema to see if something came out. People who are severely handicapped and stuck in a wheelchair don't have bowel movements that often. Sometimes they can go close to a week before things start moving. That was the case with this guy. He hadn't taken a shit for like 5 days before this. He was given the enema in the bathroom and a few minutes later gave birth to a bin bag chair-sized turd on the floor. I then went to the kitchen and got a fork, which I used to mince up the shit like I was portioning out a humongous sloppy joe. The glove wasn't there. I didn't eat for like 3 days after that. Just happened a few weeks ago. I accidentally wiped my ass with the tail of my shirt at work. Somehow got tangled up with the toilet paper on the wipe. Luckily I noticed it before I left the stall and had a t-shirt on underneath and work somewhere with a lax dress code. Not the grossest thing I suppose since I caught it, but the potential to go back to my desk with a shitty button down is a terrible thought. Once in high school my friends and I got drunk off some giant jug of red wine. I had to go take a shit, then all of a sudden was overcome with the urge to bath. It hit me too quickly to wheel around and use the toilet, so I bathed in the sink in front of me. It was a weird feeling evacuating fluids out of both ends at the same time. My friends hear the commotion and decided to open the door to find me in a real sorry state, then left. Ended up falling asleep while cleaning up. Had food poisoning and was throwing up and diarrhea at the same time. I couldn't sleep because it would happen every 10 minutes. So I slept naked on the bathroom floor with no rugs so I could clean the diarrhea leaking out of my ass easier when I eventually woke up in the morning. Edit, I was so sick I didn't even think to get in the shower. Don't have a tub. I also don't know if I would have fit laying across it. Probably tame by most accounts, but I've never told this one before. One nightish stand, friends with the girl, we were out drinking in a group. She started hitting on me, yes, and if you saw me you'd realize that was rare, so I went with it. She invited me back to her place. We did our thing and it was dirty, including a porn star finish. Then when it was over she just strolled up to me, didn't run to the bathroom to clean up or anything, and I was so tired/drunk I just lay there and passed out with the cum-covered goddess using me as a pillow. I couldn't have been asleep for long cause I woke up drunk. I felt this warm wet feeling on my hip. Yep, she pissed on me, but what woke me was she was coughing, wrenching on me, and seconds later puked all over my chest. I sobered up pretty quickly at this and was disgusted. I climbed out of bed and she never came to. Like seriously, it was probably one of those things where she would have died if she was sleeping on her back and puked in her mouth deals, so I was certainly happy that didn't happen, but I was covered in horrible bodily fluids. So I tried to wake her and she wasn't having it, so I pulled back the covers to carry her to the shower and clean us both up, and of course, she had also shit the bed. Literally every bodily fluid except for blood was on this poor girl. So I manned up, showered and cleaned us both off, washed her sheets in the middle of the night and set us both up on the couches in a position so if she puked again she wouldn't die. Then in the morning I only told her she really needed to watch her drinking cause after we banged she ended up puking. I left the other parts out. My mother tells me she came into the bathroom to see how I was doing. I had taken a shit in the tub and played with the dirt. She asked me what I was doing and I said I was playing with a pirate ship. Okay, it's not actually the grossest I've done but it's a neat image. Heave and ho. Wasn't me who did it, but my 1-year-old daughter ate the scabby stub of my newborn son's umbilical cord. I was at work one day, going through a herd of cows during the calving season. The boss man sighted one that was about 8 months pregnant, or had been up until this point. The cow had begun to spontaneously abort the calf. The embryo, still in the bag, was 70% out of the vagina and hanging loosely. Obviously this was a situation that had to corrected and we were a good mile away from the barn and the head gate within, and on rough terrain to start with. Being the low man on the totem pole, I was, naturally, tasked with following behind the cow to drive her towards the barn. Boss man stayed up on the ridge, watching from afar with his binoculars and cell phone in hand. So I followed the cow through the briar patches and hollers, and we were getting along pretty good. It was a hot summer day, and I'd driven the animal out of the shade trees. Between the heat and physical distress, I knew she wasn't going to make it to the barn on the far side and bottom of the ridge. So I said to hell with it, and called the boss. We talked it over while the cow rested, and decided not to stress her any further. That mean I had to walk up to the top of the hill, and get some of those shoulder-length disposable gloves and a lasso, and clean her out where she stood beneath an oak tree. The cow was docile enough I was able to toss the rope across her head and tie her off to a low-hanging branch without much fuss. Then I gloved up and got to work. The calf was coming out tail first, a breech birth and long since dead. Working my hands into her birth canal, I was able to get enough of a hold on the sack to get a good grip. I braced my feet and with 2 or 3 good pulls I got the calf out. The sack burst upon hitting the ground, soaking my legs in embryonic fluid. Hot, slimy, fresh embryonic fluid and blood. Bad enough, right? I bent over, catching my breath, pulling a calf by hand ain't easy. The cow shit. The cow coughed. At the same time, giving the runny fecal matter a bit of pressure as it came out. At this time the top of my head was about at the same level as her asshole. Embryonic fluid and blood from the waist down, diarrhea from the top of my head to the bottom of my t-shirt. I was fucking covered, and it was all mixing together to accumulate in the bottom of my muck boots. Nastiest goddamn thing I've ever done in my life. The boss man laughed while he used the pressure washer at the barn to halfway hose me off before giving me the rest of the day off. Edit, Reddit is amazing. I honestly didn't think this was going to get this kind of reaction. To the guy that gave me Reddit gold, thank you. All of you, thank you, you guys are absolutely awesome. A guy at work dipped and spit into a Starbucks cup that still had the lid on. At one point during our programming session I reached over and took a swig thinking it was my coffee. I had to manually remove a giant turd that wouldn't come all the way out and was stuck about a quarter of the way. After struggling for half an hour, I finally just reached up there and started coaxing it out with my fingers. The feeling of relief was indescribable but was overshadowed by the fact that I felt strangely violated in some way. It was the consistency of modeling clay, only maybe a little harder. It ended up looking like petrified wood. I had to break it up so it would flush. I actually thought about taking it out of the toilet and throwing it in the trash at one point. Don't do opiates, kids. Not intentionally, but this is how it went. Baby me is usually fussy. Mom leaves me in crib for a while. Wonders why I'm unusually quiet. Goes in to check on me. Baby me is busy eating own poop. I wasn't able to wash my foot for a good month after I had surgery done on it. My leg up to my knee was nothing but pre-surgery saline solution on top of dead skin and swollen leg, with unshaven leg hair poking through in places. The smell when I washed it for the first time. Did I mention I couldn't even use a washcloth because the entire area was swollen as all heck? My leg smelled like stinky foot and saline solution and dead skin and my sister's facial soap for over a month. When I was in the army, my unit left for a few weeks for some training. When we returned, we saw a wasp nest up by our company area, so naturally we knocked it down and threw it into the grass behind the building. Next day after PT, we find the nest in the grass, has a bunch of dew from the night before on it, and no wasps. Because we're a bunch of stupid grunts, it immediately became a bidding war to get another one of our guys, Hughes, to eat it, which eventually he agrees for the price of $40. Pops it into his mouth, chews for maybe a minute and pops a few larvae still inside and immediately throws it back up, right into my hand. Without missing a beat, I hear my squad leader shout out, "Now you eat IT, assert your dominance over him." And that's how I earned $40, a half-drunk Dr. Pepper, and dominance over my entire company who watched me eat that half-chewed and vomited wasp nest. It's also how I can guarantee my fiancé won't kiss me for a few hours, because she hates that story. Grunts are stupid, it's in our nature to do stupid things. Edit, thanks for the gold, /u/I am the bigo. Now when I tell the story I can add in I also got some Reddit gold too. The reward got sweeter. When I was 12 or so, I used to sneak into the kitchen to eat junk food while my parents were downstairs watching TV. On this particular night I couldn't find anything good in the pantry, so I raided my mom's baking drawer. I found an old bag of chocolate chips, then quickly plopped down in front of the family computer and proceeded to munch on them while I zoned out surfing the web. After finishing half of the bag, they started to taste funny, so I looked down and the bag was filled with small, white maggots. I got the norovirus. Came down with it during a trip to IKEA. Made it home, but ended up with an immediate need to throw up and have violent diarrhea at the same time. I ended up on the toilet with a plastic bag in my lap for me to bath in. But the bag had a couple tiny holes in it, so it ended up with little streams of puke going in two directions. Added bonus, after everything subsided, I blew my nose and half an IKEA meatball came flying out. Woke up in the middle of the night with a runny nose and while laying there had the urge to sneeze. I was tightly wrapped in my bedding and didn't want to let cool air under the blankets, so I turned my head to sneeze into the wall. A second sneeze was coming and I had the thought that if I aimed it at a different area of the wall, it'd make less mess somehow, so I did. But I didn't have a runny nose of snot, it was a bloody nose, and I woke up in the morning to a crime scene covering about a quarter of my bedroom wall. Got cow shit in my mouth once. It's more of something that happened to me than something I did. I was helping round up cattle. I should mention I was helping out a friend I met in college. His family were ranchers. When cattle get tired from running, their poop gets runny. Anyway, we have them all in a corral and are giving them time to relax and settle down. I'm standing next to the corral chatting with someone. A cow nearby takes a huge, runny crap. It splashed up and a decent-sized glob of it went in my mouth. Non-sexual, my ex-wife was sick, with horrible rolling around on the ground stomach cramps. My ex was not a person that could make herself throw up on command. So, we got her hunched over the toilet and I jammed 2 fingers down her throat. Instant gushing of a full stomach onto my hand into the toilet. Worth it, as she felt so much better. Sexual, not really my fault but pretty disturbing to me at the time. Had just finished anal sex with my girlfriend. She had run off to the bathroom to evacuate. As I had finished in her. While she is in the bathroom, I am laying on the bed, enjoying the afterglow, eyes closed. Suddenly I feel an intense discomfort on my member. She had a new kitten that was light enough to jump on the bed without me noticing. For whatever reason, the kitten decided I needed cleaning in that area. You know how cats' tongues are like sandpaper? And guys are really sensitive right after? So suddenly I am in the shower and my girlfriend is running around trying to catch her kitten so she can clean his mouth out. My sig other and I got food poisoning at the same time. We had one bathroom. You never get as close to someone as when you basically have no choice as to whether you shit or vomit together and in front of them, and sometimes shit and puke at the same time. Pretty romantic. I've been off of heroin for 6 years now. I was on it for 3 years. One day when I was 19 I just couldn't find money to get dope. Which happened every once in a while. Most dope heads keep a supply of Suboxone for those rare days when you can't get dope. That way you don't have to suffer withdrawals. The thing is, you have to wait a long time after your last use to take Suboxone because there is an opioid blocker in it that will put you into precipitated withdrawal if you take it too early. I had done this plenty of times before. I usually waited at least 12 hours after my last use before taking Suboxone. On this day I was withdrawing so bad after 8 hours, so I decided to take the Suboxone. Not too long after I felt it. The worst stomach pain in your life. So I filled up the bathtub to take a bath because I was going from super hot to super cold every few seconds. By the time the tub was full I was curled on the ground because my stomach hurt so bad. I was sweating profusely and started to vomit on myself. One thing about opiates is they make you severely constipated. The precipitated withdrawals made me have to shit very badly, and I probably had months worth of shit blocked up. I got naked on the floor as I was in terrible pain, vomiting and now shitting myself. I managed to crawl into the tub. The pain was so bad at this point that I just didn't care that the tub was filling with shit. As I puked over the edge of the tub onto the floor, a lot of it went into the tub with me. My brother realized what was happening and started banging on the door. I told him I needed to go to the hospital. When I stopped shitting and vomiting I managed to get out and dry myself. I left the tub full of shit and vomit water and my brother brought me to the hospital. I still feel bad for my mom having to deal with that. Fucking disgusting. Like I said, I'm 6 years clean, got my GED, am in my 3rd year of getting a bachelor's in chemical engineering and have a great life. Don't do heroin. I worked in mortgage collections and I started the job 3 days before the 2008 crash. I spent the next 6 months calling all of America, asking for and threatening with foreclosure for payments. I am so very sorry. Please forgive me. Licked old applesauce off the side of a dumpster. I was in middle school and the asshole kids were making a whole commotion about being dared to lick that applesauce off the side of a dumpster, and they were really just being too noisy. So my brilliant idea was fuck them. If there's no applesauce, they can't keep daring the other to do it. So I walked up and just ate that applesauce like I was a man desperate to win the $500 prize at a pie eating contest. I was 18, and it was my very first shift working for a patient transfer service. I was in training to be a paramedic, so I thought patient transfer was a great stepping stone. It's like a non-emergency ambulance to bring people who are bedridden to appointments, rehab centers, or home from the hospital. That day we had a patient with C. diff, who was going for a fecal transplant. This is where they literally shove a plunger of someone else's shit up your butt in hopes of introducing healthy flora to your GI system to stop the non-stop diarrhea. The patient was out of it and mildly combative, so we had to dress up in gowns/masks/goggles to help keep him turned on his side while they went at it with the large syringe of poop. He had shit himself with rancid diarrhea the entire 1-hour drive to the facility, and did the same the entire way home. The diaper was incapable of holding the liquid chocolate from hell. Immediately after they pushed the healthy shit up his butthole, he farted and half of it shot out as a stream and splattered up the wall. So they had to do it again. I don't know why I kept that job for another 2 years. TL, doctor, witnessed a super soaker of diarrhea shoot up the wall. A couple of years ago I was really drunk and camping with some friends. I used the porta-john and had my phone with me. It slipped out of my pocket and into the toilet. The toilet was pretty full of water and other things, of course. I was so desperate to save my phone that I stuck my hand into the porta potty and managed to grab it. After that, I put a bunch of hand sanitizer on my hands because there was no sink, of course. My friends and I refer to it as the toilet phone incident. Naturally, the phone did not work after that. I can't even believe I felt the need to grab it because it was just a pay-as-you-go cheap phone. You know how, if your lips are dry, you get flakes of dead skin peeling off. Once in junior high, while talking to a guy, I bit on one of those flakes, tore off a little chunk of flesh, then spit it into his mouth. It wasn't intentional, it just happened. My mom's an abusive alcoholic, white trash kinda woman who definitely exhibits signs of being a sociopath. I haven't talked to her in years. Doesn't really matter, I'm just providing context to cushion the fact that I acted like an animal. When I was about 18, after a particularly dehumanizing experience with her, I bit my tongue, dug my nails into my palms so I wouldn't fucking lose it bawling, walked to the bathroom where I grabbed her toothbrush and scrubbed my ass with it so hard that I bled. Put it back. Calmly walked out and sat at the kitchen table to eat dinner. I had food poisoning, I had just shit myself while eating breakfast. It wasn't bad, so I went to finish my breakfast before it got cold. I was thus eating breakfast naked since my underwear had been shit in. I had an uncontrolled diarrhea squirt shoot out and run down my leg onto the floor. It was yellowish brown and pure liquid. My wife was horrified. Should probably use a throwaway, but fuck it. I dip, and usually I have a styrofoam cup filled with a paper towel to spit into, and one filled with water to drink from. Now you may think you know where this is going, but stick with me. I keep the two cups on opposite sides of my desk, and one day I got to doing what guys normally do, a la masturbation. When I finished, I figured it would be easy to just put my remnants into the dip cup, which I didn't plan to use anymore and was going to promptly throw away. Before I had the chance though, I started playing Rocket League. Mid-Rocket League game I went to take a drink of water, instinctively swallowed, and came to the all too sudden and dark realization that I had just swallowed a mouthful of skeet and dip spit. I vomited on my floor almost immediately and spent the next hour in the bathroom trying to cleanse myself of my past. That is by far the most disgusting thing I've ever done, aside from beer bonging a beer I threw up. BTW. Scotty, if you see this, don't think less of me, friend. Throwaway, here goes him, a technician at an ER in an inner city hospital. I've seen some shit in my time there, but the one thing that forever sticks with me is we had a junkie check-in to get some abscesses drained from skin popping. Not uncommon considering our locale, but this upstanding member of society's location of choice for injection was unusual. I leave a different patient's room and go check in at the nurse's station to see what need to be done, and Nurse Brooke tells me PA Bill is heading into room 9 to drain said abscesses, and will need assistance and a chaperone. The implication that comes with needing a chaperone prepares me for the worst. PA Bill is waiting outside the room for me, and I suggest we fully deck out in all the PPE we can find before plunging into the heart of darkness. PA Bill agrees, and 5 minutes later we look like we're going into a hazmat zone. As we enter, we find a methed out 30-something-year-old female we'll call Junkie Judy. No hair, no teeth, sores everywhere, skin and bones, spread eagle on the bed, wearing only a teeny tiny tank top and a washcloth over her groin. PA Bill and I glance at each other and know this isn't going to be pleasant. We set up our stuff, and when we're ready ask the homely young lady to remove said washcloth so we can begin. She whips that sucker off, and we are confronted by what I can accurately describe as some Lovecraftian horror that had burrowed its way between this lost soul's legs and now feasts on her dismay. Junkie Judy's upper thighs, the creases between thigh and crotch, her taint, and her labia majora are swollen up, red, white, and black splotched, with streams of pus sweeping out of bulbous open sores, where underneath there was an unholy cage match going on between Junkie Judy's white blood cells and the meth that she has been injecting here for months. PA Bill and I are stunned. Neither of us have seen anything quite like this Mordor orc of a vagina. Junkie Judy still has enough humanity left to be ashamed of her display, and begins tearfully apologizing. PA Bill and I reassure her that we're here to help and it's nothing compared to some of the things we've encountered. We lied, and snap on our elbow-length gloves as we prepare. Brave absorbent pads and towels were sacrificed to this grotesque beast as we braced for the deluge to come. PA Bill thoroughly soaps up Junkie Judy's nethers as I adjust my safety glasses and ensure my surgical cap is on. Snug. Shortly Pennsylvania Bill salutes me with his scalpel, I salute him with my saline rinse bottle, and we begin. This goes about how you'd imagine. Numb, cut, squeeze, squirt, drain, rinse, wipe, repeat. PA Bill and I keep this up for about half an hour, working our way across Junkie Judy's treacherous topography like a cleansing sword cleaving through a nightmarish host of chaos spawn. I don't think I could do justice to the smell we were experiencing if I tried to describe it. Suffice to say we had to abort shortly before we began, so PA Bill and I could slather peppermint oil inside our masks before we re-entered the fray. Afterwards the room and bed are a mess of saline, blood, pus, and meth. Our chucks and towels didn't last past the first few minutes, but there was nothing for it but to continue. A cloudy, pink-tinged pool spread out from us on the floor, with soggy bits of used gauze, syringe wrappers, and hastily thrown down blankets to contain the pool smattered throughout. We cleaned up as best we could and flagged the room for a terminal clean once Junkie Judy was gone. She thanked us for our filthy foray, and I dressed her now much less unhappy-looking wounds as best I could before she sauntered off in her merry way, undoubtedly to find a new spot to inject so we could repeat this process for her in a couple months on a different body part. That's probably the grossest thing I've ever done. Digital shit extraction from my constipated infant, the pediatrician's recommendation. But damn, talk about feeling like a monster. Edit, also catching other child's puke with my bare hands as to try and not get it on the couch. Spoiler alert, it still got all over the couch. Unknowingly eaten toast for several days in a row without realizing the toaster had a dead mouse in it. Didn't eat toast for ages after that. Ate a tub of ice cream between me and a guy who had potential, he kissed me after and things escalated. About 10 minutes later he's fucking my throat with reckless abandon when he decides to see how long he can hold me down on it for. Cue the return of the ice cream. He said it was still really cold when it came back up, and his dick looked like a fucked up mini milk. Edit, apparently I should clarify, no he was not an asshole, I was into it right up to the point where I had to apologize for the mess. Once after a drunken night of sex, I went in the bathroom in the morning, looked in the mirror, and saw a red face covered in blood. After I had kids, my parents liked to criticize me for not being a germaphobic mom. I've always been pretty relaxed about germs, and while I kept things pretty clean, I was never overly paranoid about constant hand washing, antibacterial soaps, sterilizing things, etc. If I dropped a pacifier for example, I would just rinse it off instead of washing and scrubbing and boiling it. My kids are all very healthy and I like to think it's partly because their immune systems have had plenty of practice. Anyway, one day we were all in a hospital visiting my grandmother. It was me, my parents, and my 3 kids. We had traveled hours together to visit her, tensions were high, and my dad said something about how filthy most hospitals are. I still have no idea why I did what I did next, I guess I was just fed up with everything. I looked my dad in the eye, licked the palm of my hand, knelt down, rubbed my hand around on the hospital floor for a few seconds, and then licked my hand again. The expressions of shock on their faces. It was a truly disgusting and immature thing to do. I got sick. This is a story I quit telling a while ago. I will try and keep it short. I didn't go home during Thanksgiving break my freshman year of college. My buddy's parents were out of town so he and his brother threw a 4-day rager. One night I made a pizza and proceeded to eat 7 of the 8 slices. I was sitting at a table with about 6 stone teens and I needed to use the bathroom but still wanted the last slice, so I spit on it. I get back from the bathroom and everyone at the table was grossed out by how I protected my last slice. I said, "Oh yeah?" I then sent the final slice around the table and had everyone spit on it. The last contributor was a big smoker and hocked a big yellow loogie to top it off. I then ate the slice. One girl was so disgusted she had to leave the party. Yeah, not a story I tell much anymore. When I was younger, can't remember exact age, maybe 10, I developed some weird habit whereby instead of walking to the bathroom during a gaming session, literally 10 steps, I would piss in the corner of the carpet behind the door. In my own bedroom. The carpet was dark brown so it never showed, but when it began to stink of piss, my parents discovered my corner of regrets and I just stopped. The family cat got blamed. I don't have OCD and I'm now 20 odd years older and married, and sane, but I'll never know why I did this. Worked as a garbage man on the back of a truck. Started in the winter in Minnesota. Bitterly cold. Third day on the job, the truck backs up to a small overhead door on a small building. We open the door and I get hit in the face with warm, moist, foul-smelling air. Inside the door is a 2-yard 3 dumpster filled with everything that got filtered out of the sewage of a community of around 100,000 people. The driver explains that the actual sewage gets pumped to a treatment plant. The filter only catches man-made items that get flushed. We open the lid of the dumpster to reveal a few hundred gallons of sewage stew made up of mostly used flushed tampons and used condoms. The driver warns me to watch out as it might splash a little. I step back and we dump the entire mess into the truck, and yes, it did splash. I noticed any part of the warm wet condoms that touched the truck immediately froze to the cold steel. Then I pushed the lever to make the packing sweep blade pack the garbage into the back of the truck. It was sort of interesting watching the cold steel blade push and squeeze thousands of used condoms into the truck. They stretch and stretch, as they are squeezed by the packer, yet portions remain frozen tight to the bottom of the truck. Suddenly one snaps like a rubber band, flinging its contents with a surprising velocity. In the fraction of the second it takes me to realize what is happening, dozens more snap, then hundreds. Suddenly thousands of used condoms are exploding with the former contents flying every direction. Within a couple of seconds I was covered with the ejaculate of thousands of men. I know for a fact I've done worse than this, but I can't remember my throwaways, so we'll just go with this. Back in 2012, I went to a small party, basically 10 to 15 girls and maybe a couple guys being loud and drinking in a small apartment, with my best friend Ashley. We spent the whole night drinking and smoking weed, having a great time, doing stupid shit. Eventually, however, Ashley and I were the only 2 people left up. The rest of the people had either gone home or were sleeping/hanging out in the homeowner's bedroom. And there was no more alcohol. Except a big glass of wine that myself and a couple other people had been using as an ashtray. My buddy and I both noticed it at the same time. We made eye contact. We both knew what was about to happen. I fished the 5 or 6 butts out of the glass, divvied the wine between 2 cups, poured the cups back and forth into each other to mix the particles together, and then we had a toast. Despite the many pictures I took that night, I don't really remember much. We both, however, remember the cigarette wine incident in full, vivid detail. For fucking shame. Edit, yes, we could have filtered it, we could have been less stupid, etc. When you're drunk and high and a teenager, you aren't really concerned about logic. One time in high school my buddy had a pretty large house party after his parents went out of town. Well, about halfway through the night I suddenly felt the urge to take a massive shit. Not wanting to be known as a literal party pooper, I decided to sneak off to an upstairs guest room bathroom to relieve myself. I successfully snuck away undetected and proceeded to drop one of the largest shits of my life up to that point. Everything went fine, and I truly thought I was going to get away with it when I flushed the toilet, but to my horror, the bowl got clogged, and slowly started to fill to the brim. So, what do I do to stop this impending disaster? Out of sheer panic I reached my bare hand into my own shit-filled mess and pulled my massive shit out of the toilet. Unfortunately, it was to no avail, and the bowl still overflowed and dumped poop and pee all over my friend's guest room bathroom. Quite disgusting. TLDR, I grabbed a handful of my own shit. Okay, some backstory. My house used to have a bad rat problem. A few years ago we threw tomcat poison in every crevice then. The rats were no more now. The event I notice a water leak coming from the wall. I decide to go under the house to investigate, so I start crawling under the house and there was water everywhere. You could see little piles of rat crap in places, so I make it to the leak. Looks like the rats in their dying moment decided to chew the AC drain, rat bastards. This was when I noticed something. The water was black. Then I saw the first rat skull. Then I realized the entire colony of rats died under the house and decayed in the water. The water was black with fur. It reminded me of the swamp scene in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Anyways, just imagine crawling through dark, cramped and wet tunnel filled with decaying rat bodies and fur water. It wasn't so much something I did, as something that was done to me. I have a little sister 8 years younger than me. When I was a kid, I was laying on my parents' bed playing airplane with her held up above me. Well, she had just eaten, and she threw up directly into my mouth. So I will forever have the memory of what my mom's partially digested breast milk tastes like burned into my brain. On the plus side, I never made that mistake with my own kids. When I was real little, I woke up in the middle of the night and had to poop, but my mom was downstairs sleeping and I was too scared to yell to wake her up cause I didn't want to make her angry, and I was too scared to go to the bathroom myself because I was afraid I'd get yelled at for that too. I was a bad child, so I had to be supervised. So little me thought the next best solution would be to eat it and go back to sleep. Edit, I was not really abused, nor am I a sick fuck, but being about 2 or 3 decision making didn't come easy and I was tired. I am now a well-adjusted adult in society and that was for sure a one-time thing. I'm an ICU nurse, so pretty much every day is a new level of disgusting. When I'm assigned a patient with liver dysfunction, I'm pretty much guaranteed a long day involving lots of poop. I was a young private in the army, like 18 years old still I think, brand new to the unit. Got super drunk with my new buddies in the barracks. We were all hanging out in the hallway on the bottom floor and my buddy just blew chunks everywhere. Like all over the floor. He was totally fine after, just laughed and we all looked at his puke on the floor. He had just ate Checkers/Rallies and there was big chunks of hamburger, fries in it. Someone said to me, I dare you to eat a piece of the burger, and me being the youngest member there and still very new to the unit and very drunk trying to be cool and hardcore as we all thought we were, said, okay. I then picked up a piece of hamburger, a piece of French fry and a vomit-soaked moth that got caught in the mix somehow and ate it without hesitation. Chased it with some Bud Light and immediately became part of the group. Definitely the nastiest thing I have ever done, but also made some of the best friends I've had in life because of it. So, no regrets. Puked into a giant fishbowl I was attempting to complete with some guys I had literally just met. I continued to drink some of my own vomit. Worst thing is that they did too. I sometimes think back to that and wonder if that is even the full story. When I was broke, I was living off of 20 pounds bags of rice. Well, one morning I start the rice cooker going while I take a shower. I come back out to find my rice has a ton of tiny cockroaches in it. So, I figured I could use the protein and ate it anyways. For context, I used to work at 24-Hour Fitness and I had become friends with the trainers there over time, so occasionally I would join them when working out and they would give me advice on what protein to drink and other crap like that. So one day I was working out with them and they gave me some pre-workout to take, mixed with some other shit I can't remember, and then after our workout, we had some protein and I had left to get some food. I went to a local Hawaiian place to eat. Continuing from there I went home, and at the time I worked for Lyft, so I went to pick up the people and drove them about 30 miles out from where I lived, and I was excited cause money. As I started to get closer to their location, I started to feel the need to piss and couldn't hold it, so I had dropped them off at their location and went to the grocery store next to the mall I dropped them off at. I immediately went to the back to use their bathroom, and to my unfortunate luck the men's restroom was being used and the person in there was taking forever and I couldn't hold my piss any longer. I decided to go into the women's bathroom and piss real quick, and I was doing my business. I had the need to fart, and that's when it happened. I had immediately shit myself in the process, and I believe it was the combination of pre-workout, protein shake and Hawaiian food. It didn't end there. I had shit dripping down my leg and ass cheeks. I was in the women's bathroom still trying to figure how to clean the mess I had made, so I threw my briefs away in the trash can and started to clean myself and pants. Someone starts to knock on the door and it's a woman. I'm terrified cause I don't want them thinking I'm some creeper in the bathroom, so I don't respond, but I cough as a way to show someone is inside. Once I had cleaned myself off, I had to wait what felt the longest 5 minutes of my life until I felt the coast was clear for me to leave. Before I did that, I noticed my pants were stained with shit from the inside. Luckily I was wearing a button-up shirt, so I tied it around my waist to cover the back and just left as quick as I could. I still feel bad for whoever had to find my shit-covered briefs in the trash can. I once jammed 12 oak tree caterpillars up my nose, then shot them at my friends. As a drunken student trying to appear wacky, I knelt down on a pavement outside a pub, and licked some vomit we just found. Comment removed. I've never felt more disgusted reading a thread than today. U/Bocky4 Are you entertained now? Is this what you wanted, you sick fuck? I shouted. Checked to make sure it actually happened. It did. In front of 6 other people I worked with. Squeeze myself out of a vagina just to get pooped on. Drunk me thought it would be a good idea to piss in the sink instead of the toilet. Seen a small garbage can next to it and decided it would be funny to see how far my pee stream could go to arch it into the can. Piss ended up all over the sink, toilet, garbage can, and floor. Hear someone knock, so I proceed to walk out. A mother and small child were standing there as I opened the door waiting to use it. Turn around and also noticed it was the women's bathroom. Not that disgusting, but drunk me was even disgusted at myself. Very long TL, doctor at the end. When I was in 1st grade, I was in an accident which left me extremely burned. I'm very thankful they're not invisible places, but my entire torso, legs and neck all have a mixture of 2nd and 3rd degree burns. Fast forward a bit, I had all of the procedures you could imagine in regards to burns, but had one which was bad enough to look horrendous, but not so bad that my doctor wanted to graft it. So, after the initial process of dressing it properly and then going to have it cleaned by my doctor every other day, I spent a lot of time at the doctor's office as a child. He decided it was time to stop dressing it. My mother wanted me to feel as normal as possible, so she sent me to the same camp that my sister went to, a religious girls' summer camp. Every morning, they made you stand outside while the flag was lifted, do the Pledge of Allegiance, and join in the daily prayer. I will never forget this. I was standing there in my summer shorts, looking down at my leg and the sheet of paper-sized scab. I guess buckled is the best way to say it. The scab on top had mostly pulled away with the fleshy part of my skin exposed underneath, besides the 2 corners of the scab that were still intact. I walked over to show one of the troop leaders and she yelled at me for being disrespectful and told me to stand back in line. I was mortified, because I was a good kid and never got in trouble. I did what I was told, and bugs, decent-sized bugs, started landing on and around my scab, trying to crawl underneath it. I was sobbing, and just didn't know what to do, because I was too scared to get yelled at again. That is one of my most disgusting memories. TL, doctor, stood sobbing while bugs tried to crawl into my burn wound because I was too scared of getting in trouble. Probably not as bad some of the other stories to come, but back when I was at PSU, my friend and I decided to test the milk challenge because we both called bullshit on it. If any of you don't know what that is, it's where you try to drink a gallon of milk in 1 hour or less. Everything we read said it was impossible because you will throw it up way before you are a half done. So as a precaution, we had some buckets with us. We sat in the middle of the dorm hall facing one another. Yay. We failed, horribly. Imagine 2 19-year-olds in a hall with others wondering what the fuck we are doing, only to see us both projectile vomit with it coming out of our noses as well. Never again. Went to England for the first time on business. Went out to a pub for supper and apparently caught some sort of food poisoning. Vomiting and diarrhea all at the same time, pretty much uncontrollable. Spattered the walls and even the ceiling of the bathroom. Got better by 4 AM, but the cleaning lady was pretty incredulous at the mess I made. Came back a few years later and there were still spots on the baseboards. WTF is wrong with you people? Eating TP off the road, putting a pus bandage in your mouth, eating poop/vomit, drinking a combination of your dip, spit and cum, shitting on the floor in front of your wife. Y'all need Jesus or something. I had food poisoning while on a trip across the state. I convinced my family to stop at rest stop so I could use the toilet. All the stalls with doors were taken, so I had to use one without or crap myself. All I remember was horrible smelly water pouring from my ass. I cleared out that intestate rest stop bathroom so bad that my brother said that I prevented being used the entirety of my time in there. People walk up and turn around rather than enter the house of horrors I had created. My family eventually sent that same brother in to see if I was still alive because he pulled the short straw. One time when I was a kid, I remember feeling myself getting sick on the couch but just not doing anything about it. Like I was convinced I was gonna throw up but just sat there. So fast forward like 10 minutes and my mom comes in and asks me to scoot over on the couch so she can sit down too, where I proceed to just start vomiting, trying to move on myself and the carpet. My mom started freaking out and helped me to the bathroom, but on my way I puked on the wall and on time in the bathroom sink. Just barely missed it. I ate a PBJ sandwich that someone made entirely with their feet. It was a Sunday night. Had work in the morning, but also had my boyfriend and his best friend staying over at my house, having a few beers, enjoying ourselves as usual. At about 1 AM, both of them begin to get kind of flirty. I realize a threesome is going to happen. I should probably tell you that this is normal for us back then. We start going, and we don't stop. Just one round after the other, back to back. I think they collectively went about 3 times each at varying lengths, with smoke breaks in between. It was awesome, but also an extremely bad idea, because none of us realize how quickly time is passing. They both don't have to work, by the way. Just me. Anyways. During the last round, I let both of them come on me. One on my back, and one on my face and, accidentally, in my hair. By this time, it's nearly 5 in the morning, the sky's actually lightening up a bit. I have to get up for work in about 2 hours, so I just quickly wipe my face off with a tissue and pass out on the couch, hoping that basically this mini nap will be enough to get me through the day. 2 hours later, for some godforsaken reason, my first alarm doesn't wake me up. The second one doesn't either. Only until the third, the one that warns me I have to run the fuck out of the house ASAP, actually works. So I get up and run out of the house, not thinking about how I am still disgusting, so I can get to work on time. So that's the story of how I went to work with cum in my hair, down my back, and down my thighs too. I hid most of it by wearing a hat and a sweater, but I could still feel how horribly sticky and gross it felt. I avoided everyone like the plague and stayed huddled in my cube all day. Will never feel more disgusting than that. Now when we play with new partners, I make sure to stress that I will never ever play that late again unless it's on a goddamn weekend, with plenty of time to shower in the morning. Eck. When I was 3, I peed in my cereal and ate most of it. I got food poisoning that lasted 3 days. There was liquid just shooting out of both ends of my body. Summer after 7th grade, July 1995. My dad's employer hosted a gathering for their employees and their families at a water park. Each family was to bring a dish. Someone brought the most amazing potato salad, which I happen to love. Apparently they let it sit out too long before I ate it. Worst food poisoning ever. I couldn't drink water without throwing up. I shit and vomited for days. At one point, I switched bedrooms so that I would be a few feet from a toilet and shower. My ass was so raw from wiping, I'd simply shit and shower. After finishing a watery diarrhea, I sat on the toilet for a bit to make sure that was it. I started feeling the urge to vomit, but I was very sure I was finished shitting, so I jumped off the bowl to puke into it. Bad idea. Vomiting made me relax every muscle in my body, and as I discovered, I wasn't finished shitting. As I was bent over the toilet vomiting, I could hear and feel a geyser of watery shit shooting out my ass and spattering the bathroom wall behind me. Once all was said and done, I turned around to survey the damage. The watery shit had ran down the wall and into the AC vent. By this point I hadn't eaten in a few days and was very weak. I called for my mom and explained the situation. She looked at the mess and only said, "Clean up and get back to bed." I showered and climbed back into bed. I could hear mom cleaning the mess. She was gagging as she scrubbed the mess. A few minutes into cleaning she vomited all over. So we now had a shit/vomit stew on the bathroom floor. I'll never forget this. Cleaning that mess is concrete proof that my mom is truly the most loving person in the world. I was a fresh-faced new EMT. We went to the scene of a house fire and as we got there the firefighters were dragging out the only patient. 400-pound guy who had been in a bed that caught fire. Smoking in bed and polyester quilts don't mix, kids. About 90% of his skin was third-degree burns and he was thrashing like crazy. We get him in the ambulance and strip what clothes are left off. We give him some meds to calm him down and ease his pain while we intubate him, but they barely affect him. I'm low man on the totem, so I'm tasked with holding his legs down because we had an IO in. It's like an 4 you put in the leg bone. So I'm holding on for dear life as this massive guy thrashes. His skin is just falling off in chunks and intracellular fluid is pooling around him. Burns make you ooze liquid. Finally I get his legs pinned and my face is about 6 inches from his swollen singed testicles. And he farts. He fucking farts on me. The most nasty rotten meaty fart you can imagine. I kept my dinner down and we finish up as the chopper lands. We load him up and they take off. Spent the next hour cleaning bits of him out of the ambulance. Found his nipple on the floor. Don't smoke. Not sure if it's the grossest, but it's kinda recent, so whatever. About a year ago I had been between jobs, so I had a lot of free time. Unfortunately, this led to experimenting with, and grossly overdoing, an array of drugs. I was on day 3 of no sleep and my friend have me some MDMA. I was starting to crash, so I said fuck it because I wanted the extra energy boost. We go out to the bar and I drink way too much, again, to keep my energy up. End up completely blacking out. My roommate basically had to carry me from the bar, into a can, and then back home. When I got home I was all fucked up, I couldn't walk or stand up, but I had to take a shit, so I crawled to the bathroom and do my business. Next thing I know I'm waking up on the toilet about 2 hours later, still super fucked up, but I'm able to stand and walk, so I make my way to the couch and pass out. Slept for about 3 to 4 hours before finally making it up to my bed. Slept another 5 or so hours and woke up to a very distinct smell and an aggressively itchy asshole. Without really making the connection, I reach around and start to scratch the ole booty hole. Sweet relief. I roll over and place my face on my hand that I just used to do the scratching and was met with a dookie-covered nightmare, which was now on my face. I was super hungover and queasy, so I puked next to / kind of on my bed. Apparently I didn't wipe after taking a shit because I was so fucked up and disoriented from sleeping on the toilet for a few hours. Normally a person would to take a shower at this point, but I was so wrecked that I didn't care. I passed right back out with my dookie fingers / face and a nice pile of puke on the floor and on my bed. Continuing to read this thread even after all the shit eating and bandage licking. When I was around 8 I found a balloon while wandering around the park at summer day camp, so of course I blew it up a bunch of times. A few days later I asked my mom why some balloons are long and sticky. And that's the story of how I got my first STI test, but no actual STIs, thankfully. Not the general theme of this thread, but I shot a bird in our pole barn with a BB gun when I was a young teen. It wasn't dead, so I grabbed a shovel and smashed it to finish the job and put it out of its misery. I buried it in the corner of the barn and made it a little gravestone. I learned a lot about myself that day, and I'll never shoot another animal again. never been more disgusted with myself than I was that day. I used to work for a company called Humane Wildlife Control. On a beautiful summer day I had to retrieve the core of a dead skunk under a front porch concrete slab. I had to dig a 10-foot-long tunnel to do so. On my birthday. The stench was unbearable. Fuck, I'm ashamed of this. I worked as a busboy when I was 15. The dishwasher offered me $10 to eat a cracker with the contents of the sink drain. I'm shuddering as an adult. Damn, yeah, I bought a meal from the money I earned. Had a really bad sinus infection but still opted to go to the bar with friends. The infection was so bad that I couldn't turn my head quickly without searing pain in my eye socket nose area. As I got more and more drunk, it didn't bother me as much, go figure, and when I went for a piss, decided to try and blow out the pain in my sinus. I grabbed a few slices of 025 toilet paper and gave my nose a huge blow as I walked towards the sinks to wash my hands. An almost perfectly round glob of what I can only assume was a combination of blood and infection mucus blew right through the toilet paper and landed on the counter of the sinks. It looked like a raw egg, but instead of being yellow, it was purple and green with a yellowish membrane around it. One guy puked after he saw it, and several others ran out of the bathroom in dismay. Despite the immediate disgust level, it actually made the pain go away and I felt immediately better. This thread is horribly glorious. Fisting. Went elbow deep. Pulled out a used condom. Edit, to clarify context, we were both men, I was not on the receiving end, and we both thoroughly enjoyed it. My uncle used to chew and would spit in an empty soda can. Usually you knew it was his because it looked and smelled gross. He would have the same can for a couple days. Well, when I was little I wasn't allowed to drink soda. I would sometimes sneak a sip or chug from my parents. Well, I was out swimming, I was like 5 or 6 and my uncle was watching me to make sure I didn't drown. He ran inside real quick to go to the bathroom and I spotted his soda and darted to it and chugged as much as I could. Well, you probably know by now, but it was his spit can that I chugged. It was the most vile thing I'd ever tasted and I learned the hard lesson of always sniffing a drink before I steal a swig. Today I realized I started my period in my sleep as it looked like someone had committed a murder in my bed. I had no protection on, so I had to cup both my hands under me to catch the gushing blood to try, unsuccessfully, to keep it from spilling on the carpet. To make matters worse, my bedroom door was closed and I had to use my hand to turn the knob, leaving a pool of blood on the floor and down the door and bloody smears all over. Realized I really had to pee, so I jumped into the bathtub and peed while releasing the blood. Then I urgently had to poop. Periods mess up your digestive system, and had to climb out of the tub and to the toilet, leaving bloody footprint path in me. Mad scramble to make it. Yay periods. I like to call this one the bath in the bath. I was feeling rather ill one day as a kid, hadn't been to school or anything that day because of it. Evening rolls around and I need to wash, so my mum runs the bath. Whilst I'm in there and my mum was doing something in the other room, I barf all up in the bath. Here I am, minutes from being done, and I vomit everywhere. There I was standing butt naked, wet and covered in vomit, waiting to have the bath cleaned out so I could have a makeshift shower to get clean. Yeah, not my proudest moment. My stomach was having a terrible week, runs every day and just sickly. At one point I was half awake, standing in front of the toilet pissing, when I felt a fart coming. Unable to think due to exhaustion, I opted to not stop peeing, turn around, and sit down, but instead clenched my cheeks and let my sick fart fly. Diarrhea shot out from under my nuts and squirted into the bowl, coating my undercarriage and legs with some nice warm slimy poo. Run my hand through someone's sick on a train platform, threw some at my mate and then licked my fingers. I was very drunk and thought it would be funny. Not me, but my flatmate. One night, after we'd spent the night playing games, I go to bed in a room directly above his. Bear in mind the floorboards are pretty thin, but I suddenly hear my flatmate gagging and what sounded like his chunder hitting the floor and him running to the bathroom. I asked him what happened. Turned out he farted in his sleep, of which the smell was so bad he immediately woke up and started being sick. I often ask myself, how bad does a fart have to smell to not only make you sick, but to literally wake you from your sleep? Not me, but apparently fucking and jizzing inside a coconut is something more than 0 people have done. This is the story of when I knew my boyfriend was the one. Last Easter, we drove to see my family, and we stopped to get gas at a gas station near my hometown. I was sitting in the car with the windows down while he pumped the gas. He came to the driver's window and said, "Hey, I found 2 Fruit Loops on the ground by the gas pump. Do you want one?" And then we ate gas pump Fruit Loops together. Later, I found out that he actually found 3 and didn't tell me so he could eat 2. The 10 years I spent as a junkie stealing from and pushing away the people I loved most in life. That's the honest answer. The funny one though is the summer me and my buds spent shitting and pissing in a water cooler. We then dumped it at a park. Some of the worst smelling shit in my life. It's a smell I will never forget. The karma definitely caught up with me though. I should make a throwaway for this, but I needed to vacuum and shave my balls in my dorm, so I decided to just do both at once and shaved in my room. It wasn't my vacuum. Got the flu the first time I lived alone after being discharged from the US Army. I was probably pretty close to dying, actually. I can only estimate my temperature, but I remember oscillating rapidly between on fire and freezing to death. I had febrile seizures as an adult, if that gives you any idea of how bad off I was. And the headaches, I felt like there were a dozen people in the room with me taking turns driving spikes into my neck and skull from different directions. During this time, I was too weak to get out of bed even to call 911, which I desperately wanted to do, knowing my condition definitely warranted it. And I had uncontrollable and frequent diarrhea and vomiting. At first I actually did try to get to the bathroom, but after about a day I pretty much gave up. I managed to crawl over to where I had been ironing clothes and grabbed the plastic gallon bottle of distilled water I used for the ironed steam reservoir, humped myself back into the bed, and then stayed there for the next 3 days. Every drop of pee, every watery shit, every ounce of stomach contents. There wasn't much of that, to be honest. It was mostly dry heaves after I emptied my guts the first 50 times, it all ended up in the bed with me. I didn't even try to hold back. I just let the poo flow. I didn't even shit, per se, I just oozed. I was coated in crap. The mattress was basically just a lake of putrid liquid shit. It smelled horrendous and felt worse. It was so caustic that I actually got blisters around my anus. I shouldn't have lived through it, but I was young and in decent shape before getting sick. The fever broke, gradually, not like it does in Hollywood, and I was eventually able to get to and from the bathroom. It took another day before I could function barely. I remember the shower I took, sitting in the bathtub and just letting the warm water run down over me. It was one of the most wonderful feelings I'd ever experienced. I was out of work for 10 days. When I got back, I weighed 135 pounds, down from 155 pounds. People said I looked like a concentration camp victim, not even close, though those people went through much worse than I ever did. That shit, piss, and vomit-soaked mattress was in the apartment with me the whole time, and for a little while longer too, because I simply wasn't strong enough to haul it to the dumpster. I can only imagine what my neighbors thought of me. You could smell it halfway down the hall, and going into the apartment it felt like you were pushing your way through a barrier of shit smell. I eventually got everything cleaned up and sanitized. Had to buy a new bed, obviously, and get my carpet professionally cleaned. The smell faded gradually over the course of the next year. I gained back the weight and went on with my life. But I will always remember the time where I slept in my own shit for a couple of days because I was too weak to try, or even care about, getting cleaned up. TL, doctor, got the flu so bad I couldn't leave my bed. Lived for a couple of days in a lake of my own poo, vomit, and piss. Wasn't quite ready to get on the cart. I once pulled a toy out of my dog's butt for him. We were on the way to the vet because he had been throwing up all day. He stopped to poop, and very shortly after that I understood why he'd been throwing up. Also, I once accidentally kissed his eyeball. which was pretty disgusting. And once he threw up in my hair while I was asleep. But he's pretty cute and a very good boy. I threw up when I was sleeping and I slept for around 4 hours on my own vomit. Edit, I was so fucking drunk. I help my dad fit blinds on occasion, and one time, about 4 months ago, he needed my help at none other than Bear Grylls' house. Now I'm a very anxious and nervous person by nature, and having never had a celebrity encounter, I was very nervous. Now when I get nervous, my stomach tends to play up, let's say. So I get there and immediately need to relieve myself. But I feel too awkward to ask for the Bear Grylls household toilet. Fast forward about 5 minutes and I realize I really can't hold it in. So I rushed downstairs and asked the housekeeper for directions to the bathroom. Luckily she pointed me to an outdoor bathroom located inside a refurbished barn. As I pace-walk to the bathroom, I let out a fart. And viciously shat in my pants. I quickly run to the toilet and do what I need to do, but obviously the damage was already done. I then had to complete the job with soiled underwear. Needless to say, it's not how I thought my first celebrity encounter would go. I once spent an afternoon in Doncaster. So I sharted in my FWBS bed. Didn't want to ruin things with her, so I cleaned it up best I could, it stank, and went home. I'm hoping she washed those sheets by now. Had an opportunity to fuck a chick I used to go to school with. She is hands down the absolute hottest chick I have ever fucking seen in my entire life, and being the wimp who hung out in the library all the time, it was an impossibility to get to know her back then. But it was a lifelong dream. Fast forward 7 years, to late last year. I was a demigod compared to my fat, disgusting 2010 self. Being financially very well off, genetically well endowed, and Pornhub verified, it wasn't long until we started messaging. A few days later we hung out and started going at it. I got the first few seconds of a nice BJ on video, with consent, then turned it off and kept going. She was into actual shitting scat stuff. She said, "I hope this isn't weird, but steaming makes me so fucking horny." I was like, oh. Okay. So how's this gonna work? She told me to lay down and rub her back while she squats. So I did. Out comes a gigantic warm log of shit onto my torso. Keep in mind, I have no fetishes. I'm there to doggy style and GTFO. Nearly puking, I managed to shakily say, "Oh wow, that's a lot." She gets off, grabs a little, hand jobs it all over my dick, and says put it back in. Desperately worried about my safety and her mental health, I very reluctantly agree and anal her with a smelly, shit-encased cock. After about 5 minutes, I subconsciously and uncontrollably come in her ass. Thankful to God, she offers to get in her shower with me. We clean it up, while we kinda grind up on each other in the shower. We spend a few hours cuddling and reminiscing about school, asking why we didn't hang out sooner, shit like that, then go to bed spooning. I wake up at 2:30 a.m., put my shirt back on, and ninja the fuck out of her apartment, having gone through the most disgusting experience of my life. TL, doctor, caught up with a chick from high school. Hottest chick of all time. I just wanted to get a BJ and doggy style. She ends up shitting on my chest, rubbing it on my dick. I anal her with a shit-looped dick. Yes man, my way through the ordeal. Sneak out after that and never speak again. Wonder every day how it's possible for someone so hot to be so grotesquely disgusting. This older woman I was doing in high school was very freaky. Liked all kinds of strange things. One day I was not feeling too great after eating and started feeling a grumbling down under. So I ran to the bathroom and she followed me. I had diarrhea and it seemed to get her excited. Next thing I know, she is down on the floor giving me a blow on the toilet. Then we go to the bedroom and I try to have sex. But my stomach is going crazy. Suddenly I needed to run to the toilet and she wouldn't let me. She wanted me to stand above her and just let it go on her. I said no and then she offered me money to do it. So okay, I got paid to poop on her. She started squirming and squealing like some crazed person. If we would have been having sex, I would have been proud of myself, but I wasn't even near her and the smell was just gut churning. I had to go, so I threw her on her stomach, did my deed and took off to the shower. No matter what I did, I could not get the smell of shit out of my nose. I kind of wrote her off after that and ignored her for a couple of weeks. Then I got a call from the local motorcycle shop that my new Ninja was ready. What? Yay. She went and bought me a new Ninja. I picked it up and rode to her house. We had a very frank discussion about things and I pretty much became her paid boy from that point on. I just had to do whatever she wanted sexually, which included pooping on her. I learned real quick that if you stick a whole coffee bean in your nostrils, that it can block most smells. Binge eating and then making myself vomit. It's the combination of overeating on massive amounts of junk, then shoving your hand down your throat and slobbering till you puke most of it up. Then eating more food since your stomach's empty and now you're hungry again. Then looking in the mirror with watery eyes, from all the gagging, and wondering why you're such a monstrous fat pig and swearing to never do it again. Then doing it again. I was very drunk in the middle of a big very busy nightclub when I was a student and suddenly threw up. In the panic of not wanting to be sick on the floor in front of people, I instead caught it in my hands and shoved it back into my mouth and ate it. It was mostly peas and Alco-Pops, so could have been worse, but obviously looked up to my friends staring at me in horror. Worked a job as a non-trade vehicle assembly assistant, TA for short, for a company who were stripping the interiors of decommissioned ambulance vehicles to be reused in the new models they were assembling. I was the head cleaner, and dealt with cleaning the stuff that came out of the old vans. Long story short, ambulances are fucking disgusting. You think they clean those things? Ha. Muck and grime everywhere, spilt coffee stains that are moldy, and all gluggy, that had actually begun staining and stripping the paint, or so I assume, blood, needles everywhere, etc. We were tasked to clean the vans with nothing but brake cleaner and citrus. And occasionally paint thinners. In my opinion, all it did was make it look clean. I would not want to eat off it, though. Worst experience I had, with things like needles and blood splatters aside, would be the time I found a full set of dentures inside the underside of one of the seats. They were covered in blood. It was horrible. Like, dentures are fine, but the blood made it something next level. The next worse was when I found a rat in a closet hinge, guts hanging out. I had to get someone else to deal with that. I hate rats, and I hate their gooey insides. Edit, my horrible spelling. Is this an appropriate thread to tell the pint of cum story? I went to Roskilde Festival 13 times and didn't shower probably half the times I went there. Mind you, this is a 6 to 8 days experience. But wait, there is more. One year, I had sex with a girl the first night of the festival, Saturday. I didn't shower the whole week, as per usual, and then the last day of the festival, Sunday 8 days after we got there, I met a new girl and we had sex. Both disgusted and proud of myself. Not me but a male family member. When he was younger, he once in the middle of the night went outside and started eating tiny goat poop cause he thought they were chickpeas. Also he was like 4 when this happened and nobody except me remembers it.